Halloween Haunt opened for the 2025 season at Kings Island, and it was the first year that they had upcharge mazes, but they also promised an enhanced experience. Did they deliver on that? And did people actually pay? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is the podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. It's available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Hit that subscribe button.
Absolutely. And let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. By the way, we've got a live studio audience today when we're recording this of Tower Topics members. And if you want to be one, you can join these people. We'll explain how in a minute. But I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Logan Lipper, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Grau, Dustin Jackson, Songster Smiku, Lack Ray, Galaxy B-Boy, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster Guys and Girls, Justin Y, and Mike Garrett. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers you can get some free stuff. And sometimes they get to be in a live studio audience. This is a first for us. So hit that link if you want to be on board.
So Ryan, opening night for Halloween Haunt in the books. There's a lot to unpack from your visit this weekend. So let's get started with, just your initial thoughts. You look forward to this event every year. So as you entered the park, you walked around, you experienced the different haunted mazes, different attractions. What was the vibe like?
So it was, I was hoping you wouldn't ask this question, although I knew you were going to, because it felt so weird. I went on Friday and Saturday, and Friday, the park felt busy, but the lines weren't very long for the attractions, for the haunts. They also weren't very long for the rides either, though. It was a very weird dynamic. Then Saturday, it was Toyota till 7 o'clock. It was horrendous getting into the park. But once I got in around 7:30 or so, I thought that, this is a huge success because the haunt wait times were long, the ride wait times were long, everything was great. And then it wasn't long after that it really died down. So the only conclusion I can draw from that standpoint is we don't know yet what this is going to look like. It's not a big enough sample. Yeah. When we talk about the feel of the park, though, it kind of didn't really feel like haunt. And I'm not sure if it's something that they did or if it's too hot to be Halloween season, but it didn't have the same kind of feel that Halloween Haunt has. And you could tell that they were underprepared, by the way. A lot of the decor that's normally out was not. The ogre, the big giant ogre, that was supposed to come this year from what I understand, and it's sitting behind Slaughterhouse right now. So this whole thing is subject to change. But I don't think that the look and feel of the park is what's more important this year. I think that there are other things that you want to ask me about. And boy, do I have thoughts.
Well, we're going to have a lot of different things to talk about. But let's start with what is the marquee attraction for this year at Haunt, the Conjuring. What was that experience like?
So I took our advice that we've been giving people and got in line as soon as I could. I got into the park. I watched the opening ceremony from the rope back by the French corner, then went directly back to the Conjuring. I was about the third group to go through. And with that being said, I still waited 20, 25 minutes. The pass through on that is a huge issue. They cut the line at 11 o'clock. They have a sign up saying that if you want to do this, you have to be in line at 11. Kind of understand that, because if you get a line at 11:55, then people are getting out at 3 a.m. potentially. So let's talk about the experience itself. I had really high expectations for this. In fact, I almost thought I had kind of sabotaged it for myself, having these high expectations. And I could not have been more elated with the experience. I'm going to explain a lot of this too. I'm going to try to stay spoiler free, but there is going to be a lot of content in here that you may not particularly want to hear if you haven't done it yet. So feel free to zip ahead, but I feel like painting the whole picture is going to be important. So you go in and you go into, first of all, you don't use the front entrance of the crypt. That's walled off. You go in the side entrance directly into like the antechamber. And then you go up and you go into a particular room. You've got a guide with you. And Don, you'll appreciate this reference. You know how like in the Great Movie Ride, how you had the guide and then the guide would be like kidnapped and then like the cowboy would take it. It was like that. You would switch off guides every once in a while because one would get enchanted by the spirits and the other one would have just gotten free and stuff. But I did this haunted house, this haunted trail on the east side of Cincinnati called Terror Town. And that was one of those things where it's like they have an Old West festival there, kind of like the medieval festival or the Renaissance festival up in like Waynesville. And I remember the trail was not good, but the little town was cool, you know, because they had shops and stuff like that, and it was all themed. And I thought that was really cool. But what they did there that I kind of got excited about, and they didn't execute on it very well, was they would take your group, they'd pulse them, and they'd take you to a particular spot, and then they'd stop you, and then they would do something. And I was thinking, like, this is the Shangri-La. This is what we need for haunted houses. You take a group in, they go into a room, and then something cool happens. And then you go to the next room, and something cool happens. So it's not just like walking through and boo, you know. That's what this was, Don. Every time you go into a room and they stop you, and then something awesome would happen. And I will my God, I got to hand it to Plague Productions, because about half the time you could tell what was about to happen just by, you know, if you're techie at all, you can kind of just tell. The other half the time you couldn't. But in the times that you could tell, there was always a little bit more to it. And this is going to be a spoiler alert thing, but I do want to tell this anecdote. So there's a point where you have to dump holy water on like a possessed nun. And you can tell there's a mechanism there where the chair she's in lifts up. This is an effigy. It's not a real person. The chair lifts up. So it's like, okay, whatever. That's kind of cool, I guess. But she didn't do that. First of all, she lifts up way higher than you think she does. And she spins. And the walls come caving in. I mean, that's just a perfect example of it. And I tell you what, for $15, zero complaints.
Okay, well, let me ask you this though. Okay, as you're going through this, pretty clear that this was done by, you know, Plague Productions, outside company, that this was not something that Kings Island personnel put together for the park.
This and Order of the Dragon are so completely different from the design language that Kings Island usually uses. I think let's get through this in Order of the Dragon, then we'll kind of litigate that, because I've got a lot of thoughts on that. So live audience, if you're listening, grab a Snickers. I've got a lot to say. I'm sorry. But you know, you don't have to take my opinion for it. I actually did run in some friends and I got some thoughts. So I was joined by Josh from FYE Coasters, and this is what he had to say about The Conjuring.
Okay, so as you guys can see right behind me, brand new for 2025 Halloween Haunt, The Conjuring Beyond Fear. Okay, if you guys know me, I normally don't get scared, but I feel like it's more of an experience. So as soon as you enter, they do the storytelling, and they kind of break it up into different parts, kind of like different tour guides. And the story that they bring you along with, they actually, like, it's very intriguing, because I've seen every movie except for the new one. I think the new one just came out. And just, I don't know, like, for Legacy Cedar Fair Parks, it's very, very good for what they have here, and I'm excited for the future. It is worth the upcharge to do it one time if you haven't done it yet, or by the time you're watching this, if you want to do it, I highly recommend it. It lasts about 18 to 20 minutes, and they told me they do groups about 8 to 10 people, so they keep it kind of small. But it's very good. Get over to Kings Island and check it out.
So, yeah, don't take my opinion for it. That's Josh from FYE Coaster, so make sure that you like his YouTube and his socials. So, yeah, The Conjuring was fantastic. I have seen the movies, but it's been a long time. I can't tell you a whole lot about them, so I don't think that I was swayed by the intellectual property. But, you know, $15, or I think it's $20 some nights. Yes, like I would pay that. The downside is you're gonna wait. You're gonna wait at least an hour. You're gonna wait sometimes 2 hours. At one point they were saying 2.5 hours. It's gonna be your night if you do that. So get there right when the ropes drop, go directly to it, and you can be in and out in about 45 minutes.
And how many people per group was it? He just said was 8 to 10 people per group or something goes in.
8 to 10 people per group, and they got everybody plays a part in it, and one person has to grab the holy water, and one person has to grab the Annabelle doll, and one person has to grab some other relic, and they all come together eventually. Our friend Noah, the field reporter, actually got to carry the Annabelle doll, and you could tell he was a little scared because he kept on asking me to hold it for him. But this is what Noah had to say about it.
Conjuring is a maze that is very, very cool, and you can actually hold Annabelle, voice box, and scary monsters, a zip line, and you have to crawl. You have to carry Annabelle, or you just carry voice boxes and stuff like that, or you can just they'll give you a little thing of holy water. One person will get one, and you splash it on a demon's soul.
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was the giant Annabelle at the end.
All right. Well, spoiler alert, of course, but thanks, Noah. So it got Noah, the field reporter. Yeah. So Noah was a little scared in there, but it was not inappropriate for him. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So based on what we heard about this maze, how it was being promoted, different guests, the excitement level and everything they had for it, would you say that it exceeded the expectations or met the expectations that that had been built up leading up to opening night?
So I'm afraid to give an answer because I know that by the time this drops, they're going to have the clarity of Monday morning, and people are going to be like, I can't believe they charged for that. Everybody I talked to, everybody was like, that was beyond my expectations. And they weren't mad that they paid for it. It was really, really cool. It makes me really excited. I don't think that they can do that with more than one maze because of the capacity, but that level of detail and stuff was just, it wasn't even the more immersive maze. I think that the Order of the Dragon was, and we'll get to that. But this one, as far as special effects and cool stuff, if you're an adult and it's not like, oh, I jump scare when people, yell boo at me or whatever, this is the maze for you. If you want to just be in a cool experience. And if you've ever been to Halloween Horror Nights, I've talked about this a lot, where their mazes generally aren't scary per se. They're more like putting you into a situation. And this is what they were doing with that. We had mentioned on the show earlier last week that they were going to turn the antique photo booth into a merchandise store. They did do that. They've got all sorts of Annabelle and all the different things, shirts you wouldn't be able to wear to work because they're not super appropriate. But they were able to do that. In addition to that, they do have the Conjuring bar, the Mullins bar, I think they call it. That's where the soccer game was. That seemed to go over really well. They've got 5 mixed drinks. They've all got like the dry ice in it. You can get them as mocktails too. But they seem really popular. There weren't really like lines out the door for it. It's not crazy, but there was always somebody there ordering something, which to me is an indication of success.
Yeah, the photos that I've seen of it look really good. But let's move on to the Order of the Dragon. Now, this is a maze that someone at the park had told me, as good as the Conjuring's going to be, this is the one that we're really excited about. This one's going to be really good. And this one was going to be the one of the two that would be a little bit more scary. So what were your thoughts on it?
Definitely the more scary one. So I'm gonna retort back to Horror Nights, but Horror Nights has these things called actor activated scares. I think that's AASs or something. Don't misspell that one. Um, and what that essentially does is an actor, like at Horror Nights, they step on a pedal. I don't know what they do here, but it's probably something like that. And the music changes, the person pops out, they've got a strobe light on them, all like together. So it's not, the window dropping. It's not, hey, it's nothing like that. It's all very theatrical. That's what this was. It was all over the place. It was basically the way that kind of my friends and I, who are big Horror Nights fans, described it was, well, first of all, they said that if that was at Knott's Berry Farm, that would be one of the better mazes there, which is a huge compliment coming from them because they like Knott's Berry Farm better than Horror Nights. But we kind of agreed that if you took the creative prowess of, it's like, let's say 3 or 4 Horror Nights designers, and you give them a budget that's 2 or 3 times what a normal Kings Island new haunt maze would be, this is the product you would get. And I mean that, I don't mean that to be disparaging or anything. I mean that as the biggest compliment possible. To put in perspective, Don, on Friday night, now we do have the Express, but I bought the all season Express thing. Can't get that anymore. I went through Order of the Dragon 4 times. On Saturday, me and my friend group were not going to go to we're not going to go to haunt. That was not the plan. We went back because we wanted to do Order of the Dragon again and did it 3 more times. I guess I should go into a little bit more detail about the maze instead of just glowing over it, but I'm still like, coming down from it. But it's, you go through, you're in a dungeon. Everything is like a rock face to it. If you touch it, you can tell it's like sprayed concrete, so it feels like you're in a dungeon. At one point, you're in a sewer, and they kind of like, they do an effect that makes it look like there's water at your feet. I'm not going to spoil too much, and it's irrelevant, but they do have a dragon towards the end, and the dragon is very impressive. The only thing that's weird is at the very beginning, you have to kind of wander through this part. And so the line for it was where we thought it was going to be, in the Skyflyer area. But
yes, Tower Topics was right again.
Well, they didn't shut down Drop Tower for it. But
yeah. Anyway, that's another. Keep on going.
Right. But they have an outdoor section, and it's like probably 6 different set pieces that are kind of like castle themed, and they've got actors out there. I don't know what the point is, and it's really, really bad compared to the inside of the maze. It's such a weird first impression. If they wanted to do the castle walls, they could have done that, but this is almost like they did that, or they did the actual maze inside the Blackout building, and then somebody else came in and did the outside, is the only way to describe it. But forget that. It's not a big deal. It's the first 30 seconds of the maze. Beyond that, Order of the Dragon is probably I'm going to say with authority, it's the best maze that has ever been at Kings Island.
And again, done by an outside company, Plague Productions.
Yeah.
So we've got the 2 new mazes, both upcharges, as are all the mazes. But based on those 2, if those are the only 2 things you did, would you feel that the upcharge was worth it?
Okay. If you're asking would Ryan think it's worth it? The answer is yes. If I was an average guest, though, this is where this conversation is going to take a turn. I care about this sort of thing. I'm not a big Halloween person like some people are, but I do care about themes and details and lighting and sound and stuff like that. So I particularly appreciated this. But let's say if somebody went through in the order, I mean, everybody I've talked to loved Order of the Dragon. But what if you went through and hated it? I will tell you this. There is some new stuff with the other mazes.
We'll get to those.
If you're the average person, you don't even notice it. So to the layman who doesn't go through these mazes a couple times a season, like you or I would, they're all the same. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about what is different and what's not different, because there are some buoyant moments with this stuff, and I am really excited for the future. So I wanted to. So we were talking about like the lines and stuff, because like Carowinds and Cedar Point, they started a week earlier, and they had a bunch of empty lines. So on Friday, I went through and I took pictures, and you know, I don't necessarily think it's necessary to like litigate this. I'll show you at least one just for credibility's sake. This was Slaughterhouse at like 10 o'clock at night. There's nobody in line at 10 o'clock at night, which that should have been a 90-minute wait at that point.
That's always been one of the more popular ones, especially as it got later into the night. When I saw that photo, Ryan, was not a good thing. You'd expect on opening night that people would have at least tried it to see if it was worth the upcharge and that, but that kind of suggested that people were, guests were voting with their wallets, that I'm not going to do this. And it wasn't the only maze that I saw a photo of that did not have much of a line from the existing attraction. So let's get to, to those. We're talking like,
okay. Well, one more time is, so this is Order of the Dragon, and this probably looks like a bigger crowd than it was. This is like at least a respectable half hour or so. But Don, if they had a new maze with a lot of buzz, like Order of the Dragon, when these things were free, I bet you they would start handing out like return times like they did at the Conjuring at some other parks. This was like a half hour wait. With that being said, so Friday was definitely a dud. I saw very few lines except for the Conjuring and Order of the Dragon. Friday was also a bunch of season pass holders. Saturday was Toyota until 7, and then Haunt at night. Right now, we don't know if Toyota was given wristbands or if that was part of their package or if they got a discount. We don't know what that situation was. But I'll tell you this much, because I was texting Don because I was sitting in traffic waiting to get into the park on 71 behind Rivers Crossing Church. But people were sending me photos of just lines, like almost like last year, of Kilmart and everything else. And I was like, oh, well, and you and I were discussing it. It's kind of like, well, it's good that they're buying it, but we don't know if they paid for it or how much they paid for it. And this is a lot of non-season pass holders. What does that mean? But then, and I didn't get to tell you about this, Don, but it was weird because the lines were long when I got the photos at 7:30. I got into the park 7:45, probably saw my first line at 8 o'clock, and it was like, oh, this feels like 6 o'clock on a Friday, or a Thursday, a Saturday, that day, yeah. Saturday. And it was like, so it's like they were short lines, but they were there. And then honestly, the rest of the night, there were a few spurts where there'd be a few hundred people in line, but there was a lot of like, we did Slaughterhouse at like 11:30 at night. And it was even like, Sam the Butcher came out to yell at us and stuff because there was just nobody there. It created for a great experience. Like we had a ton of fun, but I'm not ready to say if this is a success or a failure yet, but as a snapshot, it's not looking good.
No. And from what I was told is the Saturday crowd, the Toyota group, they had the opportunity during the day that they could buy, the access passes and that. So when you get in and you got in like 7:30 and there's already a line and stuff, there wasn't enough time when the gate opened at 7 for most of the haunt people, those that were there for the haunt, to get to all these mazes because they were trying to fight to get their, themselves even through the front gate.
Yeah.
And then have to go to redeem and all those other kind of things. So that the Toyota crowd, they had been in the park all day. It was time for them to start doing haunt. And we don't know that they didn't open those at 6 o'clock for everybody, for Toyota. Who knows? We just know that the haunt crowd could get in at 7.
And I want to say this. We get a lot of people that, claim that we're naysayers and stuff. And I think I can speak on behalf of both of us where I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, I want this to work. If you've done Order of the Dragon and the Conjuring and you're like, if this is the product we're going to get, I'll pay for it. I have not met anybody yet that's like, I threw away my money because this was trash.
But what about the other the other returning mazes that they had, like Kilmart, Slaughterhouse? Were those enhanced, elevated experiences like the park said they would?
So that's what I was kind of alluding to before. For a lot of the mazes, like, I know Kilmart rather well because I've been through it dozens and dozens of times. There are new animatronics in there. They're not mind-blowing. I missed one of them the first time I went through. if you're the average person, you don't even notice. You're going to say the dragon one's great, but the rest of them are about the same. With the only exception, and this is weird because I've never liked this maze until now, but Cornered, if you remember the video where Ben was talking about how there's new overhead, is how he described it. This is, first of all, Cornered is flipped around, so you enter near closer to like Congo Falls rather than the like other side of Congo Falls. I guess is the best way to describe it. The whole maze is rearranged. There's a scene at the beginning where they simulate like a helicopter looking for you, including searchlights and stuff. That's very noticeable. That's a very memorable thing. I would have put it at the end personally because I think it's climactic, and then it's like a corn maze after that. But that one feels new. If they had gone to that level, I think that they could pass. But I do carry the sentiment of, for the average person especially, it's going to be, they've got this awesome dungeon one. The rest of them are basically the same. So it's a matter of if you want to spend $10 or $15 to go through the dungeon one.
And that's where people are having a problem, Ryan, with paying for the mazes, because they're saying, I'm not paying for something that's still basically the same thing they've already done year after year. Because there's a lot of these mazes like you've talked about, you know, they need to be refreshing that. Now, if every maze was at the level of the other two, the two new ones this year, that's one thing. But based on what you're saying, what other people are saying is, you know, if you did Killmart in 2017, it's the same in 2025.
That's exactly what I fear. And I fear for next year more so than this year. My belief is that their plan is to upgrade these mazes. So, you know, they did 2 this year, and then they'll do 1 or 2 next year and so on. And that way they keep it fresh and people want to buy their stuff. And if they're going to go with the quality that Plague Productions has given us, like, I mean, take my money.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the thing too, that you bring in a professional company and had a great reputation to put those other 2 together. And, you know, if you can every year, like you said, add another 1 or 2 to the mix, and then by the time you cycled through the returning mazes, then it's time to update the Conjuring, you know, and kind of refresh those and that. And every year there's 2 brand new ones, and everything else is still relatively new. Then I think they've got a really good thing there.
So you texted me this, and I don't think you put, a lot of times you text me and it like, it goes rent free in my head for a while. I've brought this up before, but we were talking about The Conjuring. You weren't there. I was at Kings Island, but you weren't there at all this weekend. But you were like, if you do the math with all the people in line, they'll probably make $7,000 tonight at the price point with the capacity. And I'm thinking to myself, they had to have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this maze. Like, even if they want to do like a return of investment over the course of years, they don't have that option, because I don't think that a lot of people are going to pay to do it twice. I think they're going to pay to do it, and then next year, if it's still The Conjuring, they'll just buy the other pass, you know? So I don't know if there's a path forward with that. They could raise the price potentially. That's probably what they should do. But at the same time, they don't have the option anytime soon because this stuff was free last year.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I just look at things differently like that. You know, Ryan, I'm thinking, okay, here's what the throughput has been. Here's what the price point is. You know, you do the math and you figure how many hours there are a night at Haunt. And, you know, it's not a substantial amount of money that they're making on this maze. And then you have to factor in too, you know, you're paying the actors. You're paying, you know, other people from the park, you know, to kind of be out there scanning the wristbands and that. So that brings me to my next question for you, Ryan, is how would you describe the execution by the park? I mean, we're talking about distributing the wristbands, scanning the passes or the wristbands at the entrances of the mazes and that. You know, what was that like?
It was a disaster. The second night went better than the first, as expected. And I don't want this to be a referendum on any single employee, because those poor guys, they had no idea. First of all, the register system kept on going down. I would understand that if it was opening day, but this is opening day of Haunt. And so they'd been open every weekend leading up to it. So if they add 5 SKUs for wristbands, that crashes the system. On top of that, there was a lot of confusion as to which wristband was which. So I bought the all season one. So when I went through The Conjuring, they just scanned my QR code on the phone, and it seemed to work fine. But Noah's family, Noah the field reporter's family, they bought the daily thing. They bought the fast pass along with the Conjuring for $40 or $50. They were the first people in the park. They went to the Fastlane booth to redeem, and they gave them the wrong wristband. They gave them the non-Fastlane, non-Conjuring wristband. So fortunately, the people that were working were reasonable. And we got up to the front of the line, and we realized the mistake because everybody else around them at least had the different colored wristband. And he's like, hey, they gave us these wristbands. Here's my phone. Here's my receipt. I clearly bought it. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. Go through. Which hats off to them.
Right.
So I thought that you could scan your pass in order to do the other mazes, but you can't. So they sent me to that shop that's right outside of Area 72. I walk up. They say we're out of wristbands. They sent me to Coney Confections. Coney Confections, very nice. The other people were nice too. Nobody got rude or anything like that. I want to be very clear about this. Go to Coney Confections, and the supervisor had to make a call to figure out how to have me redeem my wristband. And then they also swapped out Noah's family's wristbands for the proper ones. But there was it took quite a while, and I want to say that the people working at the park, they acted with grace. Everybody was very polite. They were apologetic when there were problems, all the stuff that we would expect out of decent customer service. The management, the implementers, that was not good. They really left these people out to dry because they probably just had no idea. I think that it'll be fine when you listen to this. I mean, Haunt's open right now. It's Sunday night. But by next weekend, I'm sure that they'll have the system down. But as far as a first impression goes, there were a lot of growing pains.
My question for you, Ryan, is, you have this event coming. You know what it's going to involve. Why is there always, it seems like every year, whenever there's something new or whatever, there's always some kind of a lot of confusion. It hasn't been communicated effectively, in terms of how this works and what you get with what. And we see that a lot with, the dining plan. I see things online now where people renewed for 2026 and they upgraded to Prestige and they decide to use the pass at, say, Cedar Point. They go there and they go to, redeem for their dining plan, and they're told it doesn't work. You have to wait till next year. No, I had all season dining to begin with. And then they have to go to guest relations. They have to fight about it. They finally get with it's just things like that I don't understand how that happens. Like why there's not more communication. They're not anticipating what can happen. It seems like, it all sounds good. And they just throw things out there, and then it's left to the people manning the mazes and that they have to deal with all this. So I don't understand that. But what do you think? Why do you think there's such a breakdown and it's not a smooth process always to begin these things every year?
Never doubt their ability to screw stuff up. I mean, really. Now, one thing that you and I had discussed, as well as my friend group outside of the podcast, is how do they position this? Like, how do they communicate to people? Like, hey, I know you got free mazes last year, but this year you're going to have to pay. Like, how do you communicate that? And they didn't. They just didn't. There were ads all around where they had a QR code where you could buy the attractions pass, but nothing really kind of explained like this is different from last year. It was more like they're trying to sell you something. So people, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. So I can't tell you how many people were just turned away. Like, do you have a wristband? No. Well, you have to go get a wristband. Wait, really? Yeah. You have to go get a wristband.
Yeah. None of that was explained. And you would think, you have something on your website called a blog that you could detail that, we have an elevated experience this year. Here's how it works. You buy it online, you go here, you get your wristband, and those kind of things. And there was really no explanation other than, like you said, you see a lot of sponsored ads, to buy these, or on the parks, channels. Haunt opens this weekend, buy your tickets or whatever. And there's not really a lot of ways to communicate to the guest, what to expect or how to do something. And this is a big change for guests. You don't have to do this year. So I think that would have helped. But the pictures. You showed me the pictures of the different mazes that had minimal to no wait times. Was that something that was a surprise to you, that it was like that on Friday night, being opening night, and everybody, they count down the days to haunt opening? It's one of their favorite times of the year. And here we are opening night, and not many guests were going through, especially at least the returning mazes.
No, I mean, I wasn't surprised because that's how people reacted at Cedar Point and Carowinds. If we didn't have that information from last weekend, I think that I would have been curious, and it would have gone one way or the other, where it would have been like this, or it would have been, I don't care, take my money. But like I said, we need this to work, because on one hand, you don't want to lose haunt. If they feel like they can't monetize haunt, that's, we're talking about people that aren't really known for their great decision making over the past year or so. So, we want this to be good. But also, I want to encourage this behavior of a better quality experience. Yeah, you pay a little bit, but it's not the same stale, stupid, it's not Kmart again and Slaughterhouse again, and, all that stuff. I mean, that's what I want to encourage out of this. And the sad part is, I'm going to show you a couple Easter eggs here. Well, actually, one Easter egg.
Okay.
And something else. So I started hearing about this on Friday night, and I didn't catch it. Apparently there's a fountain show every hour. And it's on the hour, and it's a different show, and they randomize it. And it's kind of above expectations. I'd forgotten about it. I was in redeeming my wristband in the Kings Island Trading Company, and I came out and caught the last few minutes. Let me show you this and tell me this isn't next level.
That looks awesome, Ryan. And I've got to say, if you weren't aware of that happening, as much as you are around the park and into Halloween Haunt and all the different tech things and that they do, the live shows and stuff, I would say most of the other guests in the park, would have been caught by surprise. But nothing at all on the website or the mobile app saying, check this out every hour, the top of the hour, be on International Street. Nothing, kind of directing you to go there. So it looks like just that small clip, that looked awesome, looked incredible. But how many people know, that was going to be happening and to be on International Street at that time? Because a lot of people, once they come into the park, they're not on International Street again until they're ready to head out. So for me, that would be something that I think was a miss for them this weekend.
I agree. Do you want to see the most disappointing thing that I experienced this weekend?
Oh, sure.
Okay. This hurts my heart. So the original Phantom Theater, Oregon, with Maestro played at the beginning of the ride. Mm-hmm. Didn't that look cool? Isn't that awesome?
That really cool. Really cool.
I gushed over that. I took pictures of it. I was telling everybody about it. It's not it. It's the right size and everything, but it's clearly not it.
Right.
So that was
a replica.
It may be, but because I could see them using like a small organ like that up there, because it doesn't have to look good and it just has to look like an organ and stuff. But I was so stoked. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the one that the Maestro played. And I took pictures of it and I was sending it to everybody. And then I pulled up a picture and I was like, that looks
that is not it.
Like
yes,
it, but
like it.
That hurt my soul a little bit.
Yeah.
But
I understand the shows were not available on the website and the app. I saw many people posting about that they would have liked to have known the show times, but they went to the app. It said no shows today. They went to the website, nothing about the shows today.
Don, if they didn't do that at least one time per haunt year, wouldn't you be worried about them? I feel like if they nailed the show times, they would you'd think they were an imposter at this point.
Yeah, but it's not like haunt's not, like it's a surprise. When your calendar gets approved, like in August of the previous year, that haunt was going to be, starting on September 19th. So it just, to me, just mind-boggling the things that get missed, and I'm still thinking after you show me that clip of International Street, like how there was nothing even tease that anywhere. That International Street is the place to be at the top of every hour. Just something like that on your socials. Just let people know that this kind of stuff is happening, because a lot of hard work went into putting that together, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to say the name on the show, but somebody you and I know designed that show, and they put a lot of heart and soul in it. And I ran into them, and they were, make sure you catch the show. It's so cool and stuff. And they're right. I'm going to do more. I'm going to try to get more footage for our YouTube channel and our social media of these different shows, because that's literally all I caught. I threw the camera up and hit record, as soon as I started watching. But, it's got the polyethyl alcohol flamethrower things, kind of like they had. Well, they are the same units that they had for Fun Fireworks in 50, and they have additional pyro, as you could see in the video. I don't know what the other ones are, other songs. They do other things, but that seemed like it was an unholy experience. And I mean that in a very positive way.
All right, but we talked about the mazes. Let's talk about the scare zones. How are those?
Fine. That's all I got. The scare zones were not very different. I put a short up on our YouTube of kind of walking through Pumpkin Eater, and a lot of people were commenting like, "Oh, that's great, but where are the scare actors?" There were by the way, lack of scare actors throughout the scare zones and throughout the legacy mazes too.
Did we not, or did we not do a episode that auditions had been kind of a ghost town?
And we were told we were wrong. But yeah, they weren't great with that. And that's unfortunate, and it really kind of shows, especially in the maze. You're charging for the mazes now. You have to staff them. So I don't know if it's that they didn't get enough people auditioning, or if they didn't have the budget to bring in as many people, or both. But it was, I mean, especially Kilmart really just had a couple of people in it. They redid the one in the back of the park. Remember when they did that last year, and it was, what was the theme? But it wasn't on the park map.
Oh yeah. You're
Vortex.
going, past Shake Around and Roll through there.
Yeah. They have like hanging lanterns and stuff there, and they've got people in ghillie suits and stuff. Looks great. That's almost kind of, I wouldn't even say it's a scare zone. It does have people in it and stuff, but it's not as intense, shall we say. But visually speaking, that's just phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed that one.
Okay, what about rides? Did you ride anything?
Rode the Beast twice, once each night. Thanks, Prestige Pass. It's running great. The ride lines were not that long. Windseeker is down for Haunt. I don't know if it's going to be open during the day, but my understanding is it's not scheduled to be open for Haunt. Subject to change, of course, Dustin. But they have a new sign. They have a new sign on Windseeker that like lights up in like rainbow colors and stuff. So the budget went to the sign rather than operating the ride, which is kind of funny. But to their credit, the sign is really, really cool.
Okay. And what about the fall menu items? Did you try anything off the menu? Any treats from the sweet spot? I know last year during Haunt, you were in a sweet spot almost every night getting something. So what about that part?
So I didn't. Now we come to find out today that, the tricks and treats menu items are only available till 5. So with the exception of the sweet spot, there were no real like fall treats that I could see. I ate at the Brew House and Coney Barbecue, and nothing was different there. I'm definitely going to do the sweet spot. I was just a little pressed for time this time to try to do all the mazes and take everything in and write down notes and make sure I saw it. I didn't even get to see Nightwalkers, which is a new show, I think, or the Dr. Nightmare thing.
Yeah, our good friend at KI Central, indie guy, he put a video out about Nightwalkers. It looks phenomenal. Looks like a can't miss show when you're at Haunt. So check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was more concerned with, I wanted to have every thought I could possibly have about Order of the Dragon. Now, the Conjuring, I would have done the same thing, but it's just hard to obtain that. But I did Order of the Dragon, 7 times total. So, by the way, it doesn't feel short.
You might be the record holder for that right now.
I'm the Don Helbig of Order of the Dragon.
That's right.
Where's my parade? No, but the Order of the Dragon feels like it's about twice as long as something like Kilmart. I'm not sure if it is time-wise or distance-wise, but it feels that way. It doesn't feel like you're in and you're out as soon as you go in like it is with the other mazes.
Yeah, I was told, that was the one that there was a lot of excitement about at the park level, what that was going to be. And the feedback that I've seen, online, everybody seems to be raving about that one. Everybody has good things to say about The Conjuring. But, when I before we do any episode, I always try to pull a sentiment report to see what people are talking about. So it's not just you and I with what our thoughts are. We kind of mix in what the feel is, what the sentiment is. And, what you're saying, Ryan, is pretty much what I was seeing, for the most part, probably because of the two new mazes, Haunt, the review's very positive, on that front about those two. Weighing it down a little bit is a lot of guests unhappy about having to pay to experience the mazes after them being free, since the inception of Haunt. So 25 years have been able to, or 25 seasons have been able to do it free, 25 years this year as the year marker, but that's getting a lot of negative sentiment is about having to pay for the mazes. They feel like they've already been nickel and dimed enough. And, then Haunt comes around and, here's another opportunity to try to squeeze a little bit more out of each guest. So I think that's kind of what the sentiment has been. Atmosphere wise, a lot of the sentiment was it kind of felt flat. Not that kind of environment that had been there in the previous years with Haunt. A lot of them citing the lack of fog in the park. Saying
every opening night, Don, every opening night of Haunt, the fog is not there. It's always like we're having a network issue or something like that.
Yeah.
I will tell you that Saturday night there was definitely more fog, and then I bet you next weekend it'll be all over the place. That's how it's been for like 3 years.
Yeah,
now.
But that's one of the things, like I said, that people are calling out about. About that. People, enjoyed the night rides, the extended hours until midnight. That seems to be well received. The scare actors that were out and about through the scare zones were getting, high marks. There was a lot of the sentiment about the returning mazes were not worth the upcharge, that if you had done them before, it's still the same thing, that they did not improve in terms of staffing. They felt that there was a lack of staffing around the park, not just with the scare actors, but in other areas. But the other thing that was a little bit concerning to me was just the number of, comments out there about them feeling the park was unprepared for the start of Haunt. And whether that has to do with the wristband situation you talked about earlier or anything else, but it just seemed like, it wasn't prepared for the opening of Haunt, and what the guest expectations were. But overall, the way it scores, so like out of a 5 being the best and a 1, the score total that I came up with for it after, all the different things that you plug in, 3.8, which is pretty good.
If this were a normal Haunt night, then that would be horrendous. But we knew that there were going to be growing pains with charging for these mazes.
Yeah, but 3.8 is a good score. I think, anytime that you have any kind of an event or something, and if you get a score of 3.8, that's highly positive. So for the most part, everybody liked what they experienced, outside of some of those growing pains and, maybe the park not being prepared. But those are just the things that, get noted. But because of how good those two mazes were, The Conjuring and Order of the Dragon, that it kind of raised the bar and helped elevate what that score was going to be. So that was good to see.
I ran into I'm not going to out anybody here, but somebody that we both know, and they're very prominent online, and they were very vocal about what a ripoff and this and that, and I'm not buying a season pass, that kind of thing. I ran into them and I said, hey, I know you're not happy about the upcharge, but you're really kind of just give it a shot. It's not that much money. I mean, on a Saturday it can be, but go on a Thursday or Friday, and then it's $25 to do all of them, including The Conjuring. At least give it a shot. And then if they do it again next year, you don't have to if you determine it's not worth it. But I, like I said, I bought the season long fast lane with the one-time through Conjuring thing, which they don't even sell anymore. I'm happy I did.
Yeah, I'm
because
not upset that they're charging, for the mazes. I think what I didn't like is that it wasn't communicated well. It was just kind of thrown out there. This is the situation this year. Here's what it costs. Buy now. It wasn't anything, trying to explain, why they were now charging, why the experience is going to be better than ever before. Not enough early on about the two new mazes that would have helped eliminate a lot of that negative sentiment. And that just kind of snowballed on them, just because it wasn't clearly communicated. There was no, nothing, again, like on their blog or anything on the socials that would, or even to the news media, to explain why you're doing this and why this is going to make the event better. And I think if they had done that, I think there would have been a lot more acceptance to what they're doing, rather than, the negative sentiment and that we've seen leading up to the opening and through the opening of Halloween Haunt. But overall, it's great that, the event has kicked off, and, it runs, Friday, Saturdays, select Sunday, select Thursday. So if you have a chance, check out Halloween Haunt and let us know your thoughts, in the comments.
yeah, I definitely, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I want to hear what everybody says, especially, I mean, if you are one of the type of people that, I'm absolutely not going to pay for the haunts, like, I respect that, but more so, I want to hear the people that, especially if you begrudgingly paid for the haunts, what your thoughts were after you went through them. That's where it's going to be interesting to see if you're a changed person. But Don, let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell. Buy or sell. After returning mazes were walk-on opening night, another poor weekend of guests not paying for the mazes will lead to reversal, and mazes will be included free again. Buy or sell?
Sell. You're not going to see that happen again. The mazes, they're going to be an upcharge, even if it means that they're only going to have 3 or 4 of them. But as long as they're at the level of the Conjuring and the Order of the Dragon, I you're going to spend that kind of money at some of the other, go to any haunted house, Dent Schoolhouse, any of the other ones out there. I mean, you have to pay to go do those. So I think it's here to stay. I don't think that, just holding tight, not paying for it, that's not going to force their hand and make them change what they're doing. That's not going to happen.
Well, also the question or the statement kind of implies that, after next weekend, they're going to be like, all right, we made a mistake. Okay, they're free now. Well, I already paid. So are they going to refund me? Are they going to refund the other people that did it this weekend? Because they made it free later, where it was like, okay, we screwed you guys. I don't see it. There is a world in which they go back on it next season. Like, logistically, that could happen. I don't think it will. I think you and I are both on the same page with that. I think that best case and worst case scenario, it would be more like they're included with a gold or prestige pass or something.
Not happening. You thought it was going to be included this year. You were like, there's no way they're going to charge the prestige or the gold, and they did. It's not going to change. This is the way that the Six Flags parks are going to operate with their Halloween event. If you're going to go through the mazes, you're going to have to pay to do it. That's just the way that it's going to be. They're not going to take away something that they've done forever at the legacy Six Flags parks. They're not going to leave that revenue on the table. That's been there for years. And it's just something that, guests at Kings Island, Cedar Point, Carowinds, Kings Dominion, Valley Fair, Worlds of Fun, all those parks, they're all going to have to get used to it, because this is the new way of life when you're experiencing the Halloween events at a Six Flags park.
Yeah. And I think it's for the better. I think that the growing pains are there. And I think that they're coming to understand that, your Killmarts and your stuff like that they're just not going to pay the bills, No.
But the way they did it was not the right way for the guest to, in terms of, they knew they were going to do this a couple of years. As soon as the merger took place, that this was the ultimate, down the road plan. This was going to happen. And they waited until, end of July or something to officially say anything about that. I think they could have done a better job of communicating it to the guests that this is what was going to be happening. I think they could even last year have said, this is the last year that the mazes are free. Just know next year, this is going to happen. I think communications, it really, if you do it well, in terms of communicating to your guests what's happening, nobody is surprised. Nobody, they might not like it, but they're not as upset as when they feel like they've been blindsided. And that's what happened this year.
I just feel like if they had positioned it like, and we've talked about this, where it's like, there's this exciting new thing. You guys have had these same old crappy mazes for 15 years. We're going to do these new ones. And, one's going to be a 20-minute experience. The other one is made by this professional company called Plague Productions. And it's going to have a full dragon and stuff in it. And it's going to cost a few bucks. I think that would have gone over a lot better than all of a sudden it's on the website. And in hindsight, we're adding, by the way, these are the 2 new mazes. Buy a silver pass.
Yeah, exactly with that. But, it is what it is. And I think just based on the 2 new mazes and what you've been talking about, with it on the show here, when you were texting me about it after you experienced it last night. And I think that, that's just the way it's going to be moving forward.
I almost hope so. I hope it's successful. And I hope, because people are paying for it, that it is an elevated experience and that there's attention to detail, and it's not the same crap every year. And they're going to have trouble having things 2 or 3 years in a row, let alone 10 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're paying for it, because this is a starting point with the price. The price is going to be 15 for all the mazes, and then the Conjuring or whatever the big one is going to be 20 or 25 to start.
Right.
But there's that point. There's a breaking point where it's like, you got the supply and the demand, and if the demand's there, then you can charge what you want until you can't. And they're going to have the Conjuring $30, and no one's going to go because, well, a 20-minute experience for $30. Yeah, I don't think so. And that's when they're going to start like discounting it. And it's going to be, you can buy a Halloween Haunt ticket, and it includes one time through the Conjuring, because they have that leverage now. They can bundle that in and still act like it's a separate price, but it's included. Whenever they're desperate in any way, they always take the worst possible route. When you were there, it was the bring a friend thing that devalued the park so incredibly.
I had nothing to do with that.
I know you had nothing to do with that, but you sat.
I heard about it from you.
You did, and I was right. Boy, was I right. But yeah, it's but if they start doing the thing where, if you start seeing it bundled in anywhere, that's where it starts to be a problem. Because if it starts to be like, through Taco Bell, you can buy a $45 ticket that's included, that's admission to Halloween Haunt and includes the mazes, like that, they just destroyed it right there. And that's coming. That's coming as early as next year. Probably not this year, but as early as next year.
All
right. Don, take us over the point.
Well, for Halloween 2025, Cedar Point's Midway Carousel is once again spinning in reverse. I think this is really cool, something that they did last year for the first time. Guests loved it. And, it's something that, I'd say maybe 8, 9, 10 different people that messaged me asking, why doesn't Kings Island do this? I don't know. That's a question for Kings Island, but I think it's one of the reasons, to go to Halloween weekends and, experience the Midway Carousel in a way that you can't any other time of the year.
Backward. That's kind of cool. I bet that would be a little trippy. I never got to do it. All right. We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right. So we're with the live studio audience here. I say that loosely because we're not really in a studio. But the first listener question is going to be a voicemail. And if you're in the audience now, feel free to submit questions because we want to take questions from the members. So we're going to give this first one to a voicemail, and then the other ones we're going to get from the chat. So take this opportunity to do that. But here's the first voicemail. Well, here's the only voicemail, really, unless we decide to do others.
Hey, Power Topics. This is Tim out of Morenci, Michigan. My question for you is, what do you think of this idea? Since the Cedar Fair parks, well, I guess now it's Six Flags as a whole, is doing the whole charging extra for the Haunt and Halloween attractions, what would you think about, and this is my idea to make it actually work, gutting all of the legacy mazes and houses, upping the price point, but doing more of a universal style where they have actual people come in, do the haunted houses, make them one of the greatest things out there, and actually challenge Hollywood Horror Nights over at Universal Studios. I think it would be a great way for them to get revenue. The houses would be scarier and more intense. We would probably get new ones each year. I think it would be a good idea for them to think about. Just was wondering your guys' opinion. Thanks. Love the show. Hope you guys all have a good one, and hope to see you guys sometime at Kings Island. Bye.
Well, I think we're already headed that direction,
Tower
Ryan.
Topics.
With,
This is Tim
Oh,
out of Morenci,
sorry.
Michigan.
It was so nice. He had to
My
say it twice.
question.
My
yeah, I
bad.
think that we're already seeing it heading that direction. I mean, just look at the Conjuring, Order the Dragon, both done by an outside company, Plague Productions. Came in doing exactly what he suggested that they do. That's 2 mazes. It's not all of them, but it's a start. So I think that's something that we'll continue to see, and 2 this year, and maybe another 1 or 2 next year, and before you know it, every maze is done by them.
Don, do you think that after having Order of the Dragon and The Conjuring, they'd be able to go back to Kings Island designing them, or do you think that there's going to be an expectation?
I think that if you want to really have a truly elevated experience, you just bring in the outside company to do it, because it shows that there's, the bar has been set high. There's a new standard there with, what they're doing with The Conjuring, what they're doing with Order of the Dragon. That's now going to be the guest expectation when you open a new maze, is that's where it's going to be, is at that level. So, there's no turning back now.
Yeah. My fear is that they're gonna do these 2, and they're gonna be Plague Productions, and they're gonna set the bar really high, and then they're gonna feel like, oh, if we just change the other ones and we do them, then people just think that they're new and they won't know the difference. But people,
they'll know the difference.
They'll know the difference.
Yeah, they'll definitely know the difference.
Well, and the thing though is, and I'm not ragging on anybody who designs any of the mazes for Kings Island, because they've got a million other things going on, and then it gets to be, it gets to be like, oh, we need this maze, you're designing it, and then it's like left, right, left, right, left, right, and that's all it is. And the Order of the Dragon is such a good example of, like, you're going through the dining thing, and there's the demon in there, and then you're going through the sewers and the catacombs below, and so on. I really feel like it's on a different level, and I think that if they try to have it so they design one in-house and it's the same stuff, and let's be honest here, if Kings Island designs another maze and it's new, they're going to use the same props and everything anyway. And some of these props have been around long enough that it's just, the people are going to know.
Yeah, there's already enough things that have been done that they look at and it's good enough. It's that's not going to work anymore. They've definitely raised the bar with the 2 new mazes, and I think that'll be the expectation. Anytime that there's a new maze, is that it's going to be at that same exact level that they just experienced this year with the 2 new ones.
Right. And before we move on to the live audience questions, if you want to submit, if you're listening to this not live, then you can submit your listener questions to hosts, HOSTS, at towertopics.com. That's hosts at towertopics.com. Your first name, the city you're from, as well as your question, comment, concern. We'd love to address it on the show. You don't like to send emails? Neither do I. You can send a text or a voicemail to 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. If you send us a text, then we'll read it on the show. If you send us a voicemail, then we'll play it, just like we did that previous one. That's 513-399-7538. So let's go on to our esteemed members. And if you want to become a member, there's a link in the description. You can join in on fun things like this. But the first one is from 330T. He said, was your field reporter satisfied with the lantern triggers this year? My son was very disappointed. I feel like that's for me. No, the field reporter was not happy with it. They were clearly behind. About a third of them just blatantly didn't work. Some of them were less than they were before. Like the Beast one used to have like lights that got closer and closer while the audio came closer. So it seemed like there was like a demon, a beast, I guess, coming towards you. And it kind of did that, but not really. I believe that they're behind with it, but yeah, as far as the first weekend experience is concerned, he wasn't very happy with it. He did bring his lantern on Friday. So super chat from Cloud Champ. Thank you for the super chat. You said, appreciate the content as usual. Don, any more trips planned to Cedar Point this year?
I don't know about this year. I've been wanting to get up there, but with the other things that I've been doing all summer, and now in the fall, Cincinnati Bengals, I'm involved with them in that, game days and that. So it's hard to do it, and I hope to, but I just don't see where it's going to fit in for this year.
Yeah, they have such a limited season. They don't have a Winterfest, so you don't have that extra month. We've got a Winterfest for now, but
no, and I'll be like, I've got a time plan to with my family. We're gonna be spending several days in that in Tennessee mid-October and that. So just a lot of that just takes away from being able to just jump in the car and go to Cedar Point like I used to be able to do. But now there's just so many other things that are going on. Visits to other parks. Like I said, the Bengals. If the Reds get into the postseason, I'm certainly going to want to make sure that I'm available to watch those games. So just a lot of other things going on.
Lots of other things going on. Yeah. All right. Well, if you've got your own questions, once again, you can send us an email, hosts@towertopics.com. If you want to text us or send us a voicemail, 513-399-7538. That's 513-399-7538. And we have a Facebook group. Don, tell us all about it.
Our Facebook group, you can find it easily. Just search Tower Topics. It'll come up. It's a place that we're trying to build a community of Kings Island fans, a place to just have, discussions with like-minded people that like Kings Island, maybe other parks in the industry too, that you just want to chat about your visits. It's a safe place, so, whatever, you visit the park, whatever you want to say about it, it's all fair game in there. The only thing we ask is that everybody is respectful to each other. Just, respect everybody's opinion. Your favorite roller coaster may not be someone else's favorite roller coaster. So, don't attack if someone says something like that. But it's been a fun place so far. It's a good community. It's a place where a lot of Tower Topics fans have been introducing themselves to each other. They're meeting each other at the parks and just having a good time. So join the Facebook group again. Just search Tower Topics.
Yep. Search for Tower Topics. Well, we got a merch store coming soon. I think we settled on like mid-October. So more on that.
We did. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.